Dimitri says, is it correct to say more easier? And the answer is no. And it's a good question. It's a very common issue. More easier is a redundant phrase. Why? It's because of the way that adjectives are built. This is something called a comparative. There are comparatives and there are superlatives. A comparative compares things. A superlative tells you what is the most or the least, right? So let's talk specifically about comparatives. Now, you've probably heard more and less, and you've probably heard adding er to things. So when should you do which one of those? How do I know if I should say or if I should say more, or if I should say less, or I should say as? How do I know? And it's actually not as difficult as you might think. So let's build a basic structure here. We have er endings. We have more or less plus an adjective. And then we also have as plus adjective plus as, and we have not plus adjective, not as plus adjective plus as, okay? These are the ways to build comparatives, not superlatives, comparatives. Now, how do you know if a word should be or more or less or what? The general rule follows syllables, which are beats in words. Don't try to get that from spelling. Just listen to yourself saying the word syllable. I recommend saying it with your mouth closed. Say the word with your mouth closed and listen to the number of beats you hear. Syllable. Syllable. Okay. So that's 3 syllables. Now we're talking about adjectives here. So 3-syllable adjectives, 2-syllable adjectives, 1-syllable adjectives. If you have a 1-syllable adjective, then you're going to use er. So a 1-syllable adjective would be something like fast. Fast is an adjective, add er. All right. If you have a 3-syllable adjective, a 4-syllable adjective, a 5-syllable adjective, a 6-syllable adjective, more 7, 8, 9, 10, a 100-syllable adjective, then you're going to use more or less. So an example of a 3-syllable adjective would be something like beautiful. More beautiful, less beautiful. More interesting, less interesting. All right, so that's pretty simple. So then where does that leave us with easy? Well, easy is a 2-syllable adjective. 2-syllable adjective, what do we do with those? We know what to do with 1. We know what to do when it's more than 3 or 3 or more, right? Well, if you have a 2-syllable adjective, you have to pay attention because sometimes it's more often one, sometimes it's more often another. So you might, in some cases, say easier, in some cases say more easy. For example, funny, more funny, funnier. You have to really pay attention to what's most common. My feeling is that funnier is much more common than more funny. And easier is more common than more easy. But it's not wrong to say more easy, and it's not wrong to say more funny. Okay? So that's the general idea. That's just building up to this question, which is, what about more easier? No, because when you put more in, what you're doing is the same thing as what ER is doing. These are 3 different ways to build comparatives. So if you do this one, you can't do this one. And if you do this one, you can't do this one. Pick one. If you do both, you're wrong 100% of the time because you're doing the same thing twice. Okay? So hopefully that answers the question. Now, what about exceptions. Yeah, there are exceptions. So, for example, I think a good exception is clear. The word clear, I often hear myself and others saying more clear. That's much more clear, instead of clearer. Normally we would say, oh, clear, that's a one-syllable word. Always add ER. Well, a lot of people say more clear. So that's where you have to pay attention to that common usage thing. What's more common? For whatever reason, a lot of people say more clear and less clear instead of clearer. Maybe it's because of the R sound. It's weird to say error. That might be it. I don't know the reason, but it is more common, and that kind of breaks the rule. But there are always exceptions to rules. Always you will find exceptions. Now this as thing, not as thing, very easy. Don't pay attention to syllables at all. As interesting as fun as fast as easy as, not as interesting as, not as fun as, not as easy as. It doesn't matter how many syllables there are. It's the same thing. We can consider these just as sort of a separate category of comparatives. So I hope that answers the comparative question. Dimitri, it is a good one. Whenever you're learning this sort of thing, it's great to learn the rule, but never get so locked into the rule that you're blind to exceptions. Because especially with language, anytime you find a rule, you will also find exceptions. And rules really exist to give you a kind of framework to get you close to using it correctly most of the time, but it's almost never going to be 100%.